Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, everyone. Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salam ala rasulullah. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala ali Muhammad kama sallaita ala Ibrahim wa ala ali Ibrahim innaka Hamidum Majid. Allahumma barik ala Muhammad wa ala ali Muhammad kama barakta ala Ibrahim wa ala ali Ibrahim innaka Hamidum Majid. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wa hlul 'uqdatan min lisani yafqahu qawli. We begin in the name of Allah and ask Him to send His peace and blessings upon our dear beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam and his wives and his family members and his companions and all those who follow their example till the day of judgment, praying that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes us amongst them. Allahumma ameen. So, picking up where we left off, I got it, thank you. So, 5 main ahadith that teach you what? So, what are the hadith? So we have hadith number 7, which is what? Deen is nasiha. Deen is all about sincere devotion. Then we have number 12, which is mind your business. Then we have hadith number 13. Love for your brother in Islam what you love for yourself. Then we have hadith number 15, which we'll do today, so we'll leave that to the end. Then we had hadith number 35, right? Which was about Islamic brotherhood in general. So many sentences and points here, I'm not going to turn to a sentence. And then lastly, we have number 15, which is don't get angry. That's today's. We're missing one. That's 16, right? So that's today. So that means we're missing number 15, which I'll just throw here haphazardly. Good luck trying to decipher this board. It's your problem. 15 is what? That's Islamic manners, right? So we've spent a lot of time on these hadith. 7 was some time ago, but the last few weeks we've been going in this order. We did 12, 13, 15, 35, and now we're doing 16. So the order seems a little bit off, and it kind of is a little bit off, but the purpose of it is that the scholars have said if you take hadith number 12, 13, 15, and 16, these 4 are the basis, the fundamental building block for the Muslim Islamic brotherhood. Not the political group. Islamic brotherhood meaning brotherhood, fraternity between Muslims and their fellow Muslims, brothers and sisters with each other, brothers with brothers, sisters and sisters, more so, more concentrated, more personal. So they said if you take these 4 hadith, 12, 13, 15, and 16, that will give you the basis of all manners. What does it mean to have good manners? All you need is 4 hadith. Those will have all the summary. And that's what we've been going over. We're going to go over the 4th one today, hadith number 16. In addition to that these are the basis of all manners, these are the basis of a successful Islamic society, is the, you can add another title to it, which is what we were discussing last time, which is how to be a likable person, how to be someone who can get along with others, who can have friends and family and function in society in a way that is conducive and productive for them. And that's something that people ask all the time. How can I be likable? How can I be in a pleasant gathering where people like to have me and they enjoy my presence? It's the same thing here. It's these same manners. Will you be the life of the party and people like roar when you come in like me? Probably not. But at least no one's going to hate you, right? If you have forget just these 4, but we added 2 of them in. If you have these 6, if you have sincere devotion to every single Muslim, if you mind your business, you don't engage in things that just don't concern you, if you are, you speak good or you remain silent, you're good to your neighbor, you're good to your guest, you're good to the traveler. You love for your Muslim brother and sister what you love for yourself, exactly. You do everything in this hadith, which is like 5, 7 sentences of, do's and don'ts, right? Don't lie, don't betray one another, so on and so forth. And then you control your anger. If you do these things, why would anyone hate you? Why would you be disliked? Why would you be unpleasant in a gathering, right? If this is your description, these 6 hadith, what can there be possibly to dislike about you? Again, will you be the life of the party and have the best of friends and a line of people waiting to get your autograph? Probably not, but why would people dislike you or not invite you or not want your presence around gatherings and whatnot? So hadith number 7, quick recap. That is ad-dinu nasiha. Deen, religion is all about nasiha, which is sincere devotion. They said to who? He said, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, to Allah and His book and His messenger and the leaders of the Muslim and their general masses, their general public. Hadith number 12, hadith of Abu Hurairah, where he said, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, min husn islam al-mar' tarkuhu ma la ya'nih, from the perfection of one or beautification or excellence of one's faith is abandoning that which does not concern them. Hadith number 13 of Anas ibn Malik radiallahu anhu, where he said that the Prophet ﷺ said, لا يؤمن أحدكم حتى يحب لأخيه ما يحب لنفسه. None of you truly believes until you love for your brother what you love for yourself. Hadith number 15 of Abu Hurairah, he said that the Prophet ﷺ said, من كان يؤمن بالله واليوم الآخر فليقل خيرا أو ليصمت ومن كان يؤمن بالله واليوم الآخر فليكرم جاره ومن كان يؤمن بالله واليوم الآخر فليكرم ضيفه. Whoever believes in Allah on the last day, let him say a good word or remain silent. And whoever believes in Allah on the last day, then let him honor his guest, honor his neighbor. And whoever believes in Allah on the last day, then let him honor his guest. Hadith number 16 we'll do today, so I'm going to leave off that. It's a very short hadith. And hadith number 35, I'm not going to go over all of it again because we did that. It's quite a long one. Just the last points with the last hadith that we covered, which was hadith number 15. Whoever believes in Allah on the last day, then let them speak good or remain silent. Whoever believes in Allah on the last day, then let them honor their neighbor. And whoever believes in Allah on the last day, then let them honor their guest. Just for the sake of brevity, and I know I say this a lot, but it's just really hard when you're coming across all this information. You want to include as much of it as possible. But the purpose of this class is hadith for everyday living. Things that we can use practically and refer to. It's not meant to be this in-depth dissection of all the information. So I'm trying to keep moving with the hadith without being too repetitive or too focused on one hadith for too long. But there's just so many things that I did want to cover. So I'm going to cover a few more of them just because I wanted to. Yeah, Yusuf.
I feel like a lot of these cover so many different spheres of your day-to-day life. And of course, that's kind of the point.
You look at my notes?
But how do you recommend that someone start to apply these? Do you recommend tackling them one by one, or sort of taking a collective and looking at what's more actionable at your point in life?
It's a great question. It's part of actually what I want to get into with this hadith that we just did. So I'll mention a little bit of it then, but just as a general rule of thumb for this class and any class really, but specifically this one, we've now at this point, with today, we have passed over 17 hadith. 17 sayings from your Prophet ﷺ, 17 teachings, 17 highlights, right? 17 bold subtitles, whatever you want to call it, of him telling you something. How has your life changed in the last 17 or 20 weeks? It's a rule of thumb that for every single saying you hear from your Prophet ﷺ, that there's homework. That I'm going to go home and try to do this, try to be like this. We've highlighted so much how the Sahaba, that's what made them different. That the companion, the Prophet ﷺ, passed by him, he takes off his ring and he throws it on the ground, and he tells him, why would one of you insist on a ring of fire on your finger? This is not allowed. It was gold. And he leaves. So the Sahaba tell him, pick it up, sell it. The Prophet ﷺ said, you can't wear it. But he said, there's no way that he's going to react this strongly, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and then I'll pick it up. It stays on the ground. Pure gold. I'm a couple $100 minimum, right? It's on the floor, and he says, if the Prophet ﷺ reacted so strongly, threw it on the ground so dramatically, and said what he said, there's no way I can pick it back up. So that's what made them different. So likewise, you need to adopt that kind of mentality, which is every single hadith that I hear now has to be life-changing. One of the biggest drawbacks that I've experienced learning the 40 Nawawi and teaching them is the amount of colleagues, students who are with me in whatever class I end up taking it in, or students that I'm teaching it to, who express how basic and fundamental these ahadith are, and how, for lack of better words, they're played out, or like, yeah, we kind of already know this, and it just hurts to hear it, because this is something that I've covered personally as a student in my beginning phase, later on when I've been studying for a few years, much later on now where I've had, actual official academic exposure, where I went basically to get an Islamic degree, and then you still revisit all this. And each time you revisit it, you find that it has so much to offer. And this is what makes Imam Nawawi a genius, that this is what Islam is all about. If you, I won't even say perfect, if you have these 42 hadith on your mind every single day, and they are your thought process and your worldview and your metrics for your relationships, then that's it. You're set. You're set to be okay. So you're going to make it if that's your mentality by the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because this is the core of our deen. This is the most important factors. So I'll get to a little bit of what you said throughout today's talk altogether, but just as a preliminary answer, there's not a single hadith that can pass you by here and it's not life-changing. Not because of the components or something you never heard before, they're so dramatic. That's not why. It's because this is your Prophet ﷺ telling you how to fare through life successfully. You must have that attitude. If you thought right now while we were talking, oh my God, we covered 17 hadith, I don't know them, or I don't know some of them, that's a huge red flag. There should be alarm bells in your mind right now. The nephew of Aisha radiallahu anha, Urwa ibn Zubayr, if I was not mistaken, I think it was him. He wasn't a Sahabi, he was a Tabi'i. He was born after the Prophet's death. He used to visit her all the time to learn the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. Like, you saw him, I didn't. And in one of these gatherings, one of these visits, she tells him, have you implemented what I taught you last time? Like, how did that go? Where are you with that? He said, I'm working on it. So she told him, my nephew, why are you gathering the evidence against you? You're coming in here and you're just like stocking a notebook for your case on the Day of Judgment that's going to be read against you. You're coming back here for what? You didn't implement the first thing I told you, you're back for more? This isn't a call for you to leave if you're not implementing stuff, because then none of us would be here, right? Even me myself included. But it's a reminder for us that why are we here? What are we here to do is to implement. So definitely make that a to-do list with every single hadith of how you can implement this hadith differently. But very quickly, especially since hadith number 16 is short, with hadith number 15, there's a couple of things I forgot to highlight last time, or we ran out of time. The first thing is the Prophet ﷺ is this hadith, some of the scholars said it summarizes all of Islam for the reason that Yusuf mentioned. So what do you notice about the actions of this hadith? What do you notice about the three things that we're being told here? You already said something, Yusuf, one thing. Hadith number 15, which is Islamic manners, I guess it's titled. I don't remember Imam Nawawi's title, if he has one. So here you see that you mix between all different categories of actions. So you have, in this hadith, you have actions of the heart, whoever believes in Allah on the last day. You have actions of the tongue, speak good or remain silent. And then you have actions of the limbs, honor your guest. What's up with this thing? Honor your guest and honor your neighbor. Which also includes finances, right? You're going to be buying stuff to honor them. So it has all these different categories of actions. That's what this is, by the way. Categories of actions. Also, if you want to back up before that, has action and inaction. I don't know if inaction is the right word. Probably refraining from action. Does refrain have its own noun? Refrainment? Refrainment feels right. Anybody? And I know inaction is a word, but I think refraining is more accurate to what I want to describe. It's not super important. Abstainment. There you go. This guy's the man. Abstainment. Abstention. That's it. It's abstention. Together, teamwork makes the dream work. It's abstention. So it has action and abstention. And that's all our deen. Our deen is telling us to do stuff and not do other stuff. So this has both, right? Speak good or remain silent. That's the abstention. Number 3 is it deals with the Creator and the creation. So the Creator, whoever believes in Allah on the last day, and all these other things that you do afterwards are for the sake of the Creator. But then everything else after whoever believes in Allah on the last day, those 3 other statements have to do with the creation. So you speaking, your neighbor, and your guest. In addition, it has, what else? Any other interesting things? So this is the categories of your actions, right? It's belief, speech, and then physical actions. Going somewhere, picking something up. So that's the summary. Anything else? We have one more thing. Which is the outer and the inner. The outer and the inner realities. So I know that our deen focuses on both. Right? There's the physical prayer, and then there's the khushu'. there's the fasting, not eating and drinking, and then there's the taqwa that you gain from it. Right? There's the hajj, physical actions going around the Kaaba between Safa and Marwa, and then there's the reason for all of that, which is what the Prophet ﷺ said, all these things were made for what? In hajj. Why do we do these things? Go between Safa and Marwa, throw pebbles, go around the Kaaba. Remembrance of Allah. Yeah. He says these things were made for the remembrance of Allah so you can be wary of Him. How does that connect to all these things? That's the discussion of Hajj. So the point of this hadith, it has everything a summary of Islam in just these three statements. It doesn't seem very in-depth, but it is. It is, and that's something that is very, very interesting. So the Prophet ﷺ said the first statement was about the tongue. And I know we spoke about it sort of in depth, or we gave a lot of hadith, but it just, when you look at it just a little bit more, you see that there's a lot more to reflect over, and it's powerful. Super powerful, which is why I went back here, despite saying that I wrapped it up last week. And the first thing that the scholars mention is something that you tend to forget, is that the tongue is a blessing. It's a blessing from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Not just this lump of flesh that's in your mouth, this muscle, but the ability to use it so seamlessly to say what you want. Like, do you ever think about that? What is the process from you thinking about what to say and then saying it? How long does that take? A lot less for some people. No offense, but like some people, it's lightning fast, right? It's the speed of light. It's because they don't think. But for most people, normal people, alhamdulillah, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us health and well-being in our families and all Muslims, Allahumma ameen. Even with thinking, even if you think deeply about what you say, it's going to be no more than a couple of seconds, one or two. If you ask someone something and they sat there like this, just look how fast you guys laughed. I was here for like 2 seconds. Like, I didn't even look that weird. That's you. You guys are. It's 100% a you problem. But just in 2 seconds, people found it a little weird or awkward. So you don't have more than a couple of seconds before someone calls an ambulance and says this person's not responding, right? So it's like the amount of time that we generally together collectively allow ourselves to think, non-existent. But anyway, that wasn't the point. That wasn't the point at all. The point was, it's a blessing from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to be able to speak, and it's such a profound blessing that it's one of those things that has bamboozled scientists. They don't understand where language comes from. How come human beings are the only things in all of existence that we know of that do this? Everything else grunts or whimpers or clicks. Nothing makes words like this. They don't know. So where did language come from? That just by itself is proof of Allah's existence. You want to hear the theories? These are real. I have to preamble this. These are real scientific theories of where language comes from. So don't laugh at me. First one is the mama theory. The mama theory is that the easiest syllables to make, like M, B, what else is like with your lips? No, P is a hard one. M and B are really the easiest two sounds. That the easiest sounds attached to the most significant things formed words. So mama, that's what mama theory, because the most important thing is your mom, and the most easy sound to make is mama, I guess. And that's how sounds came about, that the most important things got the easiest sounds, and from there we went on. So that explains two words, right? Mama and baba. It doesn't explain shoes or that weird click sound that some African tribes do. It doesn't explain any of that, right? But that's where they start. So the first one is the mama theory. The next one is the bow wow theory. And before you ask, yeah, they're all like this. They're all like going back and forth to play on sounds. The bow wow theory is what? What do you guys think? That we started words in imitation of animals, right? Bow wow is what dogs make, which I always found very interesting. They don't really do bow wow. In Arabic culture, they say ho ho. You know, you figure it out. What's the difference? Any other different cultures make this have a different? How is this? Is what I said. That's the Arab culture. Ow, ow, ow. Okay. Anything different? This is fascinating to me. Has nothing to do with what I'm talking about. Just this is for my own personal. Any other cultures out there? Hamma? I mean, cows are pretty unanimous to me that they make moo, but I guess not anymore. So this kind of touches upon the problem, which is who decides what kind of sound the cow makes. Like, everyone's going to differ, right? How it sounds exactly. He does it a little bit more mooey than this guy. How are they going to decide on the word or the syllables? But these are just random theories. They didn't really think it out. If you look into them, you might find that they did think it out a little bit, but it stops very fast. Like these jokes that I'm doing here are not really jokes. These are the discussions according to expert linguists throughout the last, century. The third one is the poo-poo theory. It's not what you think. It does get better. You have no idea. Like I had to stop myself from making an extensive list. The poo-poo is that we made words in imitation of emotional sounds. So poo-poo is actually the sound people make when they're crying. I don't know who they heard crying, but according to them, that's how people whimper when they cry, whoever made this theory. I didn't look too deeply into this, as you could tell. I just pulled out a quick list. So sounds like laughs, sighs, cries, things like that. We modeled our first words how these things sounded. Right? Boo-hoo, ha-ha, whatnot. The next one is the ding-dong theory. And that's that they made sounds imitating what? Noises. Onomatopoeia, like bang, scratch. Similar to the animals, but of things, not animals. You put them together, I'm sure someone out there did it, the bow wow ding dong theory, but that's not a real one. I made that one up. The next one, number 5, is the yo he yo theory. And that people started, the first words came from exclamations from communal work. That because we got to pick up this tree together, we're going to make a systemic form of grunts or whatever, and we're all going to understand that means put it over there, slow down, speed up, my back, so important statements for when you pick stuff up. The next theory doesn't have a funny name, but it's definitely the most ridiculous one, is the genetic mutation theory. That one day, a human was born, and it had a mutation in it, and that mutation was the building blocks of language. How did that spread to others? How did it result into different languages? How did that result into a system of words and connecting emotion to it? Question mark. But it's a mutation that caused our tongues to have the ability now to make more profound sounds. And with that increased profundity and that increased level of articulation now, you attach human emotion to it and language came out of there. It doesn't explain how it becomes a collective thing, right? Especially since it doesn't have a particular mutation. The whole idea of mutations in evolution is what has an evolutionary advantage. This helps me survive. How's it going to help the first person to talk survive when they're the only ones talking? Like we're supposed to believe that everyone around them said, hey, you want to talk about it? You seem like you're talking now. Let's get a cup of coffee and you can tell us about your problems as opposed to what's he doing, kill him, right? That's how things were back then, according to them, according to evolution, right? Things were wild back then, as opposed to like this one's doing stuff that's weird. That's antithetical to our survival, so kill him. He's making new noises that predators can hear. Right? Why didn't that happen? Who knows? But a genetic mutation just caused language to develop all of a sudden. Number 7 is Noam Chomsky's theory. He's a current linguist. He wrote this theory about like 60, 70 years ago. Exploring all these things, he said they were ridiculous, unlikely. But his answer is not much better. But his answer is like, these do not make sense to suffice of how language and how we see it now, with everything that's attached to it, research, books, poetry, music, is impossible to have come through these random, crude, uninspired methods. He says it's in a predisposition of humanity. Human beings, in their brain, have the ability to speak. It's something that's there already, from birth. And it's pre-installed. So it's similar to the genetic mutation theory, except he doesn't say it popped up one day in one group of humans and then from then on it began to develop until all humans got language. No, he says it's already there. It's already there from the first human being. Where did it come from? I don't know, but it's for sure not something we acquired. That's the whole point. Saying it's not something we acquired, it's something that we were created with. He didn't say the word created, but it's something that our brains inherently have. Why am I doing all this? Because the last theory, and I only took like 7 or 8 out of like 15. The last one, all the way on the bottom of the list, if they even include it. If you look up these linguists and like these kind of researchers, if they even include it. The last one, or haphazardly thrown on there, will be divine inspiration. That it was taught by a divine entity. It was something that was installed onto us from the outside, if you believe in that stuff. They'll throw it in there. And we have Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala telling us over 1400 years ago, waking us up, أَلَمْ نَجْعَلْ لَهُ عَيْنَيْنِ وَلِسَانًا وَشَفَتَيْنِ. Didn't we give you 2 eyes and a tongue and 2 lips things that are necessary for your survival, for your progress, for your comfort, for you to be able to express to the person next to you, I'm hot, I'm tired, I'm scared, give me your hand, show me the way. Right? That's a miracle in and of itself that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created in you, that you have this ability to articulate. It's one of the first things Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions. Ar-Rahman, allama al-Quran, khalaqa al-insan, allamahu al-bayan. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this surah that's all about His signs, that's all about His miracles, that's all about His power, that's all about His uniqueness. He says, Ar-Rahman, the first verse is the most merciful. It's Allah's name. That's how the surah just begins. Ar-Rahman, Allah, the most merciful, the one who bestows all mercy. He has taught the Quran. The first and most gratitude that we owe for any blessings is this deen, this purpose that we were taught, this guidance that we were given. It's even more of a bigger blessing than our very creation. Because He says, Allama al-Quran, khalaqa al-insan, right? He created man afterwards. Allama al-bayan, He taught him how to clarify himself. He taught him how to be eloquent, how to be expressive. That's from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَعَلَّمَ آدَمَ الْأَسْمَاءِ He taught Adam all of the names. Then He told the angels, what are these things? The angels never cared. Right? They were created, they were told to worship, done. They didn't say, what's this thing flying? Why does this cloud look like this? Why are the stars that? They couldn't care less. They were popped into existence, they started worshiping. Adam a.s. was like, curious, what's this, what's that? And He taught it to Adam. He taught him this vehicle of language that even the angels were not given in the same exact fashion. So, you heard all of them now. These are the most prominent, high-quality linguist theories of where language came from. What do you think? Right? What is your conclusion in the midst of all this? Which one sounds the most conducive? Not to reason, I'll say particularly, not to revelation, but to how we use language. Do we use language on a high level or a low level? Humans in general. Let's not get to people specific. But humans in general, like what do we do with language? Is it like impressive, or is it like it's not really a necessity or essential, or it's all we are? So which one of these theories actually match that and are conducive to the greater picture? Something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala calls us to contemplate upon. So that's number one, is the blessings of speech. Number two is the responsibility. We spoke a good deal about that yesterday, so I'm not going to go over all the ayat and the hadith again. But just, I want to mention just a couple of quick things. One of them is the hadith of Abu Sa'id al-Khudri, radiallahu anhu, where he says that the Prophet ﷺ said, إِذَا أَصْبَحَ ابْنُ آدَمْ فَإِنَّ الْأَعْضَاءَ كُلَّهَا تُكَفِّرُ اللِّسَانِ When the son of Adam, when you wake up in the morning, all your limbs, they curse out your tongue. Your limbs curse out your tongue. The Prophet's wording was to kafir. They make takfir of it. Call him a kafir. Like imagine all your limbs in the morning, like you kafir. In the sense of, and there's different interpretations here. One of them is the kafir in the linguistic sense, the ungrateful one. The one that doesn't acknowledge any blessings and is very, very entitled, very arrogant. It's a very negative term, right? Outside of kufr meaning disbelief, just in terms of ingratitude, covering the truth, denying the truth, it has all these meanings. So why are they cursing him out so much? In the morning, every day they're cursing him out. They say, اتَّقِ اللَّهَ فِينَا فَإِنَّمَا نَحْنُ بِكَ Fear Allah regarding us, because we're all tied to you. Our fate is in your hands. Fear Allah regarding us. فَإِنِ اسْتَقَمْتَ اسْتَقَمْنَا وَإِنِ اعْوَجَجْتَ اعْوَجَجْنَا Because if you fly straight, so will we. And if you are crooked, so will we be. It's up to you what we're going to do today. If we're going to keep our act together or not, it's up to you. So make sure that you fly straight so we can do likewise. Otherwise, we will follow you in your crookedness. Imam Nawawi, he comments on this hadith that he included in his connection, and he says it's important for you to realize that you're going to safeguard your tongue from everything that doesn't clearly present a benefit to you. Like if you can't sit down and say, what's the benefit of this? And it pops up immediately in your mind, don't say it. Be quiet. That's his advice. Why? He says, because from the wording of the Prophet ﷺ is that if there's no clear apparent benefit, you should be quiet. That's what the hadith seems to be saying. Because say good or be quiet, as opposed to don't say evil. No, it's say good or be quiet. So even the neutral was kicked out of this, as he said. And why do you think that is? We discussed that, right? Why do you think that is? So he says because neutral talk is just one step above haram, and that's where it's going to lead to, as we've seen in experience. He's saying, he's like, have you ever sat in a gathering and the talk didn't take a wrong turn? It's just kind of the norm. As time goes on, the more speech that is said, the more likely that it heads in this direction. All right, so any questions about this hadith before we quickly cover number 16, the next half hour? So the next portions, like we covered them briefly because they don't really need even to be taught. Honoring your guest, honoring your neighbor. We covered them briefly, and as we said, why does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mention these specifically in the Quran and through the teachings of His Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam? Why are these specifically mentioned, your guest, your neighbor? Because there's a proximity to you. So everyone who has a closer proximity to you should get better treatment. Or else, what is all this discussion about you being a good person and treating people well? What does it mean? Who cares? If the people closest to you, of the closest to your orbit, your neighbor, your cousin, your guest, your parents, get the worst of it. But then the lady in the cashier gets a smile and a good day, good morning. They should. I'm not saying to deny them, but if you're going to go from that to the worst possible treatment to those closest to you in your closest proximity, that makes no sense. Allah wants us to realize that your true nature has to be something constant and consistent. And there's people who specifically are owed a greater due of it. And those are those closest to you in proximity, like your family, like your neighbor, like your guest. And the family, the further that ring goes out, the less of a right they have over you, but still as by virtue of being in your family. So your parents over your siblings over your cousins, and so on and so forth. So much so that anyone who even enters your proximity for a split second deserves a little bit more than someone who doesn't. Which is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions as-sahibu bil-jamb, your friend in proximity. So there's different tafsir about what this refers to. A lot of the scholars have said it refers to somebody who shares your space for a limited amount of time, like the companion on the road. And companion on the road here, it doesn't mean somebody you're traveling with. Someone you're going to be with for weeks or months. Companion on the road means we just happen to be walking in the same direction. So we occupy the same road for some time. And then once the turn comes, we'll leave. So it could be a couple of hours, it could be one day. Right? That's what a sahibu bil-jamb is. Sahibu bil-jamb is someone who will be your companion temporarily. What's the equivalent of that for us here? Train. Someone sitting next to you on the train, on a flight, even more so because it's a few more hours. But if I'm sitting next to you on the train for 5 stops, what did I get out of those 5 stops? If I'm a non-Muslim who sat next to you on the train for 5 stops, what did I get out of it? The answer should never be absolutely nothing. Or at the very least should be no harm. Right? You didn't burp in my face, you didn't push me down, you didn't take up my seat, you didn't like do anything annoying, spill something on me. That's like the very least of it. Manspreading, sure. People still do that? Is that still a thing? Well, who won? The lady. So that's New York. That's New York for you. Fascinating. I want more details, but I'll get them from you later. Somebody who occupies your personal orbit for a few hours deserves a little bit more of that good treatment. At the very least, they don't get negative treatment. What about the traveler? He's not in your orbit. So why should I care about the traveler? He's not in my... So the neighbor's in my orbit. He lives next to me. My family is my family. My guest is my guest. He's coming to see me. But what about the traveler? Take him in. There's no one in his orbit. He has no one in his immediate orbit. Why? Because he's out of his town. So his family is back home. His neighbor is back home. His ethnicity, all that stuff is gone hundreds of miles away, maybe months away, especially back then. So when he comes now and he is downtrodden, he's at a deficit in terms of his connections, that's where I step in because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said so. The Prophet taught me that. So it's important to look at it in this holistic way so you don't just glance over it like we were saying in the very beginning. I know this hadith, say good stuff, be good to your neighbors, be good to your guests, next. Don't ever do that. There's so much more as you can see that we can get out of it. Any questions before we move on very quickly? Hadith number 16. Going once, going twice. Go ahead, on.
So, for example, if you were doing these things, or you do these things, and you don't have Allah at the forefront of your mind, or you're just like doing it because you're a nice person, right, outside of Allah, do you still get the hasanat for it, or?
So, it's important to know, the scholars differed here. There's a difference of opinion. That's like the short answer. A lot of the scholars have said that in interpretation of a lot of hadith, that we don't have the time to go over now, but I'll mention one just because we mentioned it last week, which was the hadith where the Prophet ﷺ said that إِنَّ الرَّجُلَ يَتَكَلَّمَ بِكَلِمَةٍ, a man may say a word, لَا يُلْقِي بِهَا بَالًا, he doesn't give it any consideration. He doesn't give it a second thought. And he'll either fall into the hellfire because of it or rise because of it. So they said, how can he not give it a second thought and then get rewarded? Doesn't he have to have a purposeful intention? So they said this, the scholars have interpreted this hadith to mean it's become second nature to him to say good words. It's become second nature to him or her to spread kindness, to spread good. So they don't consider this deed like, oh, I'm spreading khair, I'm doing da'wah, and they're really thinking about it. It's their norm. So they're still doing it intentionally, but not very purposefully, or not very detailed in their intention. So in that case, it's possible, according to these scholars, that someone can have good become their norm, become their custom, that they don't think about it that detailed, and inshallah they'll still get rewarded for it. And other scholars said, no, these are إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ, right? The first hadith that we started with. That it's, for it to be eligible for reward, it has to have an eligible intention. Right? Someone could say, I'm being nice to this guest because I want him to invest in my business. So it's a completely worldly intention. So there'll be no share of the hereafter for that. He either invests or he doesn't, right? That's the conclusion. So it's a yes and no. If someone has no worldly intention in mind, that this is my guest, I'm honoring him, that inshallah we hope will be enough to be even within the difference of opinion that you're good. That's enough for I want to honor my guest. Because why are you doing that? You're doing it after receiving this information and over a period of time where you're no longer actively thinking about that, where it's no longer an active intention. It's just the norm when you get a guest. So why would Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala deny you of the reward of that, right? That's the whole premise. So try to be as intentional as possible, but with that being said, hopefully there's room for when you do it second nature, that because it became second nature and it's so easy, that Allah will not deny you a reward for that. And another piece of evidence is, as they say, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Al-Layl, فَأَمَّا مَنْ أَعْطَى وَاتَّقَى وَصَدَّقَ بِالْحُسْنَى فَسَنُيَسِّرُهُ لِلْيُسْرَى. Whoever gives and believes and commits to all of this, we'll make it easy for him, this path. So Allah will make it easy, where it's no longer as active on your parts, seamless. So that wouldn't make sense that it gets easier, then your reward diminishes because you're no longer as actively thinking about it. This is the discussion that the scholars have had. Last hadith in the collection that we were discussing, that we were referring to, because it's definitely not the last hadith about manners or brotherhood, but the last hadith that we will go over is hadith number 16. I'll read it quickly just because we're short for time. عن أبي هريرة, it's also narrated by Abu Hurairah رضي الله عنه, أن رجلا قال للنبي صلى الله عليه وسلم أوصني قال لا تغضب فردد مرارا قال لا تغضب. A man came to the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم and he said أوصني, which means give me advice. And the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم said لا تغضب, which means don't get angry. It literally just means it literally means do not be angry, not get angry. It means do not be angry. لا تغضب, do not be angry ever. That's like the translation. The man repeated the question and the Prophet ﷺ repeated the answer. Give me more advice, don't get angry. Give me more advice, don't get angry. Give me more advice, don't get angry. Doesn't mention a number, it just went back and forth between the two of them ﷺ in this fashion. So, don't get angry. Or do not be angry. A couple of things we'll talk about. But first, before we get there, why do you think the man repeated the question and why the Prophet ﷺ repeat the same answer? Why is the man saying, Prophet ﷺ, give me advice? Prophet ﷺ said something. Instead of leaving or asking a follow-up, he says, give me another advice. Go ahead, Ammar. So he's not satisfied with it? Possible. Go ahead, sister. Maybe he's hoping for a different answer, right? It's like, tell me something else, something different. Yeah? So in terms of the Prophet's response is that, hey, apply this first, then I'll give you more. Okay, anything else? So, he has a temper. So this is what you need, right? He said, give me more advice. This is all the advice that you need. This is what he's saying. Okay, possible. Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Yeah. So he has a personal problem with anger. Any other thoughts? So in terms of him asking, first and foremost, we have multiple narrations that give us a few more details that kind of highlight why he asked multiple times, or why he's asking in the first place. So in one narration, he comes to the Prophet ﷺ, he says, Ya Rasulullah, dulluni ala amalin yudkhilni al-jannah wa la tukthir alay. Oh Allah, oh Messenger of Allah ﷺ, tell me about an action that will enter me into paradise and keep it light. He told the Prophet ﷺ, keep it light. So if he told the Prophet ﷺ, keep it light, and he says, give me more advice, he says, no, this is all, like, you said keep it light, right? So this is my keeping it light. I'm not going to say more than this. Right? This is more than enough to keep it light, which makes sense. In another narration, he says, لَعَلِّي أَعِيهِ, perhaps I will memorize it. Prophet ﷺ said, لَا تَغْضَب. Like, look at the perfect response, just seamless. He said, give me something that I can memorize. He said, لَا تَغْضَب. 2 words. Even one of them is like not even like a full la, no, don't. تغضب, get angry. Can you forget that? Like, it's not, you couldn't forget that if you wanted to. It's just so simple, and it was like on the spot in response to his question. Also, that question, it shows us why he's asking. Enters me into Jannah, yudkhilni al-Jannah. This is who they were. They were people who came to the Messenger of Allah and said, give me something that takes me to Jannah. Then the next day they'd come back and say, give me something that takes me to Jannah. And they'd come back the next day and say, give me something that furthers me from the fire. Give me something that earns Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's pleasure. This was just how they were, all the time. How many hadith do you have where someone's coming to the Messenger of Allah and it's Mu'adh or Aisha or some other great companion, may Allah be pleased with all of them, and they're asking for, tell me about goodness, tell me about salah, the basics. They weren't satisfied with just hearing 1 or 2 answers and then living their lives. They were hungry for more, and they constantly came back to answer him, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Also, some scholars have mentioned that it's not because of any purpose specific to this man, but it's because the advice itself is comprehensive. It's good enough. This is covers so many different things that this is all that you need to hear right now. And this is one of the miracles of the Prophet ﷺ, that he says, "Utitu jawami' al-kalim." I was given comprehensive speech. This was a gift that I was given, that he could say 2 words like "la taghdab," that literally occupy, a couple of centimeters on a page. They're not even a full sentence, not even a full line. And then you'll have these expositions of it in volumes. That you could have the 40 Nawawi, that if you were to list them back to back, you wouldn't complete 40 pages. Each hadith is less than even half a page. You probably wouldn't finish 20 pages. And then here you have 1,500 years of volumes written on it. Because it can be expounded into law, it can be expounded into finance, it could be expounded into sociology, it could be expounded into history, it could be expounded into spirituality and religiosity, of course, it could be expounded into family relations. What other teachings, who else's speech has had any semblance of this done to it besides the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ? It's impossible. It's only his speech that has been imbued with this blessing, which he said himself, he told us it's a gift from Allah, called Jawami' al-Kalim, comprehensive speech. It's one of the things that Allah has given him, amongst others that he lists in a different hadith. So what does Jawami' al-Kalim have to do with this hadith? Don't get angry is all evil. All evil manners are there, as the scholars have said, is in your anger, is in your lack of control for your anger, or you becoming angry too frequently, as we'll explore the different meanings of do not get angry. So that's Jawami' al-Kalim here. So it's more than you need, it's enough. Ja'far ibn Muhammad, rahimahullah, he says, Al-ghadabu muftah kulli shar. Anger is the key to all evil, which is why the Prophet said, close it all with 1 shot, don't get angry. Abdullah ibn Mubarak, he said, he was told, اجمع لنا حسن الخلق في كلمة. How would you describe good manners in 1 word? He said, ترك الغضب, not getting angry. 1 sentence that will say all good manners, how you can gather them all together, just control your anger. And this was also the interpretation of many of the previous scholars, which is that the speech itself, or the advice itself, is comprehensive to all negative qualities, because they can be found in anger, even if anger doesn't directly cause, even if the correlation is not direct, anger has all the negative qualities, is what they're trying to say. And the last thing is some specificity between, as you guys mentioned, some specificity between the Prophet ﷺ and this man. He gets angry a lot, he saw him get angry, that's also a possibility of this, why it happened this way. Yeah, Yusuf? Jawami' al-Kalim is speech. Jawami' is comprehensive, or Jawami' is like a compilation. So it's like a compilation of speech, but that doesn't give the meaning. Comprehensive speech is the meaning. That I can say a few words and be able to expound many meanings. So do not get angry. لا تغضب. The scholars have said it has three interpretations. What do you think they are? All right, first one's literal. Good job. Got a detective over here. You're the man. No, it's sometimes the most obvious will go beyond people's heads. So literal, don't be angry. It's literal. What else? So one is literally do not be angry. Number two is don't get angry. And number three? That's number two. Don't get angry, don't go near anger. What do you think number three would be? Yeah, when you're angry, control your anger. And these are three different statements. If you fail here, try this. If you fail this. So three steps, switch two and one. That's my bad. Well, actually, it's your bad. You guys mentioned in this order. So number one is don't get angry in the first place. Number two, if you are angry, don't be. And number three, control your anger. We'll talk about all three of them right now. So number one, which is supposed to be don't get angry. Before anger begins, what are the things that cause you to get angry? What are the triggers? What are the events and the stressors? The certain words, maybe certain people. Put all that into a system, into your journal, and write it out. Say, every time I talk to this person, he always has, let's say, a joke to say about my clothing, and I feel it bubbling inside. Like I want to roast him, but not in like a friendly way, right? I want to make sure that I let everyone know that I'm upset and put him in his spot. So if you already know this is the context of interacting with this said individual, why are you going in blind each time? And then this time you used words that you're not supposed to use. This time it's affecting your relationship, it's affecting the gathering. You came in here knowing this was going to happen, right? He does this every time. So why did you not respond to the triggers? You just went in blind. So number one is for you to prevent the things that lead you to getting angry. It's preventative measure, right? It's being proactively engaged in not getting angry in the first place. Number two and three are similar. Number two is now you're angry, don't be. You ever see how ineffective it is to tell someone angry to calm down? Right? Have you ever told someone calm down? They're like, oh, thank you, I'm done. Like that's all I needed to hear. It doesn't work that way. Except for some people. Like for some people, I don't think it's a light switch, but it's very similar to one. Like if they were just to be caught in the moment and told, hey, you're really angry right now, stop it. Like that could help. For people who are aware of all this, who are aware of their heart, who are aware of their spiritual journey, who are aware of their words, who all of this doesn't sound foreign to, there's some people in the midst of that who could be just caught with hey, you're angry right now, you need to relax, and that's it. They're like, okay, I'm good, I'm done. Like maybe their anger doesn't disappear, but I'm able to calm it down now where I'm no longer as I was before. The third point is now, when you're angry, calm down. You must calm down. If it can't be immediate, if it can't be you're told, hey, you're angry and that's it, just that realization, that's the difference between 2 and 3. Where just number 2 is a quick realization, you're told and that's all. It's done. Some people are like that. They have that control. Number 3 now is proactively try to calm down your anger. And how do you do that now? How do you do number 3? Okay, so we have the isti'adha. Hey, slow down, guys. I can't write that fast. Isti'adha, wudu, change place. Breathe. Someone said breathe. You should definitely breathe. Change your place, change your environment. What else? Pray. Not familiar with that one, but I'll add it next to wudu. I only added a couple here. There could be more for sure. Sorry, I'm doing that on purpose to keep you guys awake. Yes. So the first one says isti'adha. Second one says wudu / pray. Got both languages going on there. And the last one is change places. So the first one, we have the hadith in Bukhari and Muslim, where Sulaiman ibn Surad, he says, استب رجلان عند النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم ونحن عنده جلوس وأحدهما يسب صاحبه مغضبا قد احمر وجهه. We were sitting with the Prophet ﷺ one day, and two men start cursing each other, start arguing and yelling at each other, and they're cursing each other. And one of them, who was really angry, was cursing at his friend, and his face got bright red. You can all imagine this scene, right? We've seen it before. People are arguing, this guy's face gets really, really red, and now he's cursing and he's yelling. So the Prophet ﷺ said, إِنِّي لَأَعْلَمُ كَلِمَةً لَوْ قَالَهَا لَذَهَبَ عَنْهُ مَا يَجِدُ. I know a word, a sentence, if he were to say it, whatever he's experiencing would have disappeared. And that is, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. I seek refuge in Allah from the cursed shaitan. So they went to him and they said, hey, the Prophet ﷺ said this. So the man, he was still angry. He's still like, it didn't work. So they told him, didn't you hear what the Prophet ﷺ said? Like, relax. This is what I was telling you before. Some people could be just told, relax, and some people can't. And then he didn't respond to them well, and he said, إِنِّي لَسْتُ مِن مَجْنُونَ. I am not crazy. And the commentary of the hadith mentions this was a Bedouin man from the desert, and we spoke about the Bedouins, how they were very crude and uncouth and difficult to manage. We've said that multiple times. That was their culture, that was their temperament. So he was a crude Bedouin, and in Jahiliyyah, before Islam, ista'adha, asking Allah that specific statement, A'udhu billahi min shaitan or shayateen, that was used for people who were crazy. They say the jinn has made you crazy, say this statement. So he said, I'm not, like, why are you telling me this? I'm not nuts, I'm just mad. But they're trying to tell him, the Prophet is telling you that, right? Telling you to say this, not because you're crazy. That's pre-Islam. Now in Islam, and the scholars have mentioned, subhanAllah, even its connection to the pre-Islamic connotation should not be lost on us. That they used to say, A'udhu billahi min shaitan rajim, when they thought someone was crazy, someone lost their mind. And now Islam is teaching us it should be said when you're angry. There's a connection between losing your mind and getting angry, between shaitan and anger. That's what's being told to us here. We have another thing here. We should have probably numbered these. That would have made more sense than these weird looking arrows. Thanks for your feedback, guys. I just didn't want to number it twice because that might be weird, but you'll figure it out. You'll be okay. We have be quiet also, right? So the hadith of Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhuma, where he said that the Prophet ﷺ said, إِذَا غَضِبَ أَحَدُكُمْ فَلْيَسْكُتْ قَالَهَا ثَلَاثًا. If one of you gets angry, just be quiet. And he said this 3 times. If one of you gets angry, be quiet. If one of you gets angry, be quiet. Saying a statement, when you repeat statements, ﷺ, you have to put your mind, you have to picture it. Imagine you're sitting there, with me, imagine I said the same statement word for word 3 times. Like just repeated it, looked around and said the same thing. Everyone would be like, are you okay? Did your notes jam or something? But it's clearly, everyone would wonder, why are you doing that? The emphasis here shouldn't be lost on us, that he repeated these things, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the initial advice of la taghdab in the initial hadith, and then this one in whatever context it's being said. A man came to Maymun ibn Mihran, rahimahullah, and he said, Maymun ibn Mihran says, a man came to Sulaiman and said, Ya Abu Abdullah, awsini, O Father Abdullah, give me advice. And he said, la taghdab, don't get angry. So he said, أَمَطَنِي أَن لَا تَغْضَبْ وَإِنَّهُ لَيَغْشَانِي مَا لَا أَمْلِكْ. You're telling me don't get angry, but it overcomes me something that I can't control. Like this is a human emotion, how is that supposed to work? So Sulaiman responded to him and he said, فَإِنْ غَضِبْتَ فَأَمْلِكْ لِسَانَكَ وَيَدَكَ. When you get angry, control your tongue and control your hands. So this goes back to this, be quiet, stay quiet. There's something more superior to staying quiet, right? What's more superior to being quiet? Making dua, which is under the category of what? We took it last hadith. Saying something good. Speaking good is preferable to being quiet. But here he's advising us to be quiet. He didn't say good when you're angry. Why? Huh? So most likely when you're angry, you're not going to, if you're prompted to speak, you're not going to say something good. That's not what people do. So in your case, even though speaking good is superior to being quiet, making dhikr, ista'adha, dua, telling people, you know what, I forgive you for the sake of Allah, those are all good things. But for you in this state, you're compromised right now. It's better for you to stay quiet till you calm down. Because if you speak, and I've seen this happen for you in my very eyes, where someone says like, you know what, bro, I don't want to fight. I love you for the sake of Allah. The other one says, get out of here. Then the other one says, you know what? And then he revamps his effort in cursing the other one out. So he temporarily tried to do something good. It crashed and burned epically in front of everybody, right? Because you're not in this state to do this right now. You should have just went your separate ways and saw yourself. You could have seen each other in an hour or tomorrow, and that would have been more conducive. Yeah, Yusuf.
So I have a friend, and we've spoken about this hadith. And that friend of mine, in front of me at least,
No, they can still benefit because they have buttons. You just haven't found them yet. You can keep pressing if you want, but something's going to happen in their life. So this hadith is more pertinent and applicable to certain people than others. That's for sure. And it's important for us to be self-aware. If I have an anger problem, Prophet ﷺ is speaking to me more than anybody else here. That's something I should tell myself, and it's okay. If you get angry at that, you really have an angry problem. Like you really need to get some help. So it's okay for it to be more applicable to you and also not as applicable to you, right? So somebody who's like, they're really mellow, they're really stoic, they don't get angry easily, they're very controlling of their language, their temperature doesn't rise from like gatherings, then they have good temperament, they're okay. They should still keep it in mind that when those buttons finally do get pressed, I gotta be careful because sometimes those guys, like when it gets pressed, it covers up for the fact that they haven't been angry for years, right? It gets released with interest. So other than that, he's good. His temperament matches what he should be like. We have many hadith where the Prophet ﷺ rebuked people for cursing the weather, for cursing the time, for cursing their animals. Their animals tripped or slipped or acted up while they were riding them, and he rebuked them every single time. Saying, you got angry at your animal, that's your problem. Why are you cursing it? Shouldn't it manifest in foul language? Or even if when it wasn't foul, people cursed their animals or made dua against them, he said, why are you doing that? It's a manifestation of anger that's not good. It's better for you to have been quiet. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told us that وَلَوْ يُعَجِّلُ اللَّهُ لِلنَّاسِ اسْتِعْجَالَهُم الشَّرِّ بِالْخَيْرِ. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala rushed towards people the evil that they insist on, and in the tafsir of this verse, it mentions the people who make dua against themselves, which the Prophet told us not to do. Does the Prophet need to tell you, don't make dua against yourself? Is that something that you do? You don't do it? Yeah? Yeah, on purpose? No, you're a good guy. Anybody else? No one's going to sit there and say, oh, Allah, ruined my life. No one does that. That's not what he's talking about. But when people get angry, when things go wrong, people say, FML, right? People say, kill myself. Worst day of my life. Everything's the worst. Or I can't, they say that though, right? That's a dua, isn't it? He said, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, don't make dua against yourselves, don't make dua against each other, don't make dua against your animals, don't make dua against your homes, don't make dua against your wealth. Why is he going over all these details? Because when people encounter difficulty with these things, sometimes they say, God damn you. Sometimes may say nothing good ever comes out of you, and may nothing good ever come out of you. When people are upset, they say these kind of things. What could happen, he told us, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He said, don't make dua against these things. He listed for us family, yourselves, meaning your own personal self, your wealth, your animals. What could happen? He said it could coincide with a period of response. Maybe there's an angel who was designated to say Ameen, and he was sent your way so you could make dua for your parents and your well-being. Instead, you chose to curse yourself out, and the angel's like, Ameen, it's you. And then you got what's coming because you're the one who sent it this way. Right? And even if it was a manifestation of your anger, what did you get out of it? To curse yourself or your own property or your own family. What do you get out of that? Right? It's wishing for evil. And there's story after story all throughout Islamic history till modern day of it coming true and people regretting. People regretting that this person got hurt or their child got injured or their child never succeeded or they themselves, everything went downhill since I said that statement. I've met people like that, and you can never take it back. It's something that you just realize, oh man, I was frustrated and I said something that I wish I did not. So, stay quiet. First thing to do, my blood is heated. I feel my heart rate racing. Let me be quiet. That's my to-go to, because I know I'm not in proper state to say things that will benefit me and not harm me. The next thing we have is change places. I'm just going in the order I have in my notes, but this is the four of them that we'll go over. Change your place. We have the hadith of Abu Sa'id al-Khudri again, where he said, the Prophet ﷺ said in a khutbah, أَلَّا إِنَّ الْغَضَبَ جَمْرَةٌ فِي قَلْبِ ابْنِ آدَمَ أَفَمَا رَأَيْتُمْ إِلَى حُمْرَةِ عَيْنَيْهِ وَانْتِفَاخِ أَوْدَاجِهِ فَمَنْ أَحَسَّ مِنْ ذَلِكَ شَيْئًا فَلْيَلْزَقْ بِالْأَرْضِ. The Prophet ﷺ said in his speech, surely anger is like a burning hot coal in the heart of the children of Adam. I think that accurately describes how it feels, right? Some like really someone check that person out. Something really, really burning inside of you, and it's uncomfortable. You can't just ignore it, right? It's inside, and it's causing a level of discomfort that has to be addressed. So he said, this is what anger is like. Anger is like. Didn't you see to the redness of one's eyes and the flaring of their ears? You see when people get angry, they physically start to change. He says, you could see that, right? So it's resembling like a burning coal. It's a process. So whoever feels any of these things, you get these warning signs. What did he say to do? Stick to the ground. He said, stick to the ground. He didn't just say sit down. He said, stick to the ground. Get low. Get on the floor. In the other hadith, he said, إِذَا غَضِبَ أَحَدُكُمْ وَهُوَ قَائِمٌ فَلْيَجْلِسْ فَإِنْ ذَهَبَ عَنْهُ الْغَضَبُ وَإِلَّا فَلْيَضْطَجِعْ. If one of you becomes angry while he's standing, let him sit down. If it doesn't go away, then let him lay down. You go from standing to sitting to laying down prone. Yeah, Yusuf.
There's actually a scientific explanation behind that.
This guy's looking at my notes. It's the next sentence. Go ahead.
It becomes easier for blood to circulate through your body and to breathe when you lay down because there's less resistance to gravity and other sort of forces in your body. So that sort of feeling of like your chest is tightening and everything's getting hot, it gets mitigated.
Yeah. So exactly, it's pure science. You have to. Someone says, I've seen people say, like, sitting down doesn't calm me down. It may not have like a mental effect on you. Like where you're saying, okay, I'm sitting down now, I'm calm. That's not how it works. It's not how it works for anybody. Like, I don't know who told that person that's how it works. Well, the way it works is that by physically going from standing to sitting, and then from sitting to laying down, your heart rate and your blood pressure must go down. That's how your body functions. It goes down a little bit. So if your beats were at like 85 beats per minute, they'll go down to 80 or 75. It's a natural process. It has nothing to do with what you want or what you feel. Just by naturally going from standing to sitting, from sitting to laying down. So subhanAllah, even when I'm sitting, if I sit on the ground, my body might calm a little bit more. And then if I lay flat, my heart rate goes even a little bit lower. And like Yusuf said, it becomes easier to breathe. So the physical effects of anger are literally reversed by these steps. What does this remind us of? It's the hadith of fitna. Remember the hadith of fitna? Where the Prophet said, إِنَّ الْمُتَّجِعْ فِيهَا خَيْرٌ مِنَ الْقَاعِدِ. The one who's laying down in these times of intense tribulation is better than the one who's sitting. And the one who's sitting is better than the one who's standing. And the one who's standing is better than the one who's walking. And the one who's walking is better than the one who's running. The less participation you have in troublesome times, the less trouble you'll get into. That's what it's saying here. So in anger, you're in a troublesome time. You can get in trouble if you act upon it. The less that you do, the better. And of course, this all has exceptions. This is just general rules, as we said. When we were talking about the tongue, its challenges are two things. Remaining quiet from evil, and then speaking up in times where truth must be spoken out. So just like this, there's times where you should be angry, and anger is a merit, but this is just the general idea. Number 4 is make wudu. It's already up there, that he said, so anger is from shaitan. Shaitan is created from fire. Fire goes out with water. So if you become angry, make wudu. And the last thing, number 5, is, it should be first, but I put it last, because that's just how it is when people are angry. You need to understand true strength. You need to understand what true strength is. And that's what the Prophet ﷺ told us in the hadith, that لَيْسَ شَدِيدُ بِالسُّرْعَةِ, that the strong one is not the one who out-wrestles people. They used to wrestle one another as a pastime, saying the strong one is not the one who beats everybody. إِنَّمَا الشَّدِيدُ الَّذِي يَمْلِكُ نَفْسَهُ عِنْدَ الْغَضَبِ, but the one who is actually strong is the one who controls himself at the time of anger. That's true strength. Someone could realize true strength is in me controlling this. That could be like a positive feedback loop. Like, no, I did something today that I didn't think I'd have the ability to do. I'm strong, I can. Next time, no, I control myself before, I could do it again. And the reason why this should come first, there should be that thought process that comes first, but I put it last, is because when someone's angry, you can't really grab them and say, hey man, think about true strength and be courageous and you're a man or you're a woman, if people say that to each other. And you got to do this right, and they'll be like, you know what, you're right. It's very unlikely. They might curse you out, right? But it's a lot easier to say A'udhu Billahi Shaitanir Rajeem right now. Then be quiet. Sit down. Go make wudu. Come with me. Let's go to the bathroom and make wudu together. So that's a lot more possible to do for someone who's angry than to say, let me talk to you about true strength and what it really means to be strong. It means to let him curse you out, and he'll be like, get out of here. Like, the last thing I need is your advice right now. It's not gonna land, right? Ata ibn Abi Rabah rahimahullah, he says, ما أبكى العلماء بكاء آخر العمر من غضبة يغضبها أحدهم فتهدم عمل 50 سنة أو 60 سنة أو 70 سنة ورب غضبة قد أقحمت صاحبها مقحما ما استقاله. Ata ibn Rabah, he says, how severe are the tears of the scholars at the end of their lives. Saying, I've seen scholars at the end of their lives cry over this all the time. This is a common sight for me to see. Which the scholars reach the end of their lives and they cry over a single action or a single statement that they said or did in anger. And they feel that it has destroyed 50 or 60 or 70 years of their hard work. That they understood that, oh, I got angry here, I lost my temper, I said something, I did something. There goes decades of work. There goes all my journey. And then perhaps he said a single moment's anger will enter the one who expresses it into a situation that there's no getting out of. One moment's anger, and this is something that is also attributed to Ali ibn Abi Talib radiallahu anhu, one moment's anger could result into 1,000 moments regret. Like there's nothing that there's no redo, there's no undo. Right? That word can't be taken back, that action can't be undone. Hassan al-Basri rahmallah, he says, if you have self-control in the face of these four things, you'll earn safety from the influence of shaitan, and you'll earn salvation from the hellfire. These four things that you must control are fear, things that you're afraid of, you don't want to happen. Things, and then longing, things that you do want to happen, things that you yearn for. 3, things that you desire and you lust. And then number 4 is your anger. Control these 4 things. If you can control them, he says you're good. Shaitan won't have influence over you, and you'll be saved from the hellfire. You control your fear, you control what you long for, you control what you physically lust after, and you control your anger. We spoke about the reward, right? The Prophet ﷺ said, "من كظم غيظا وهو يستطيع أن ينفذه دعاه الله يوم القيامة على رؤوس الخلائق حتى يخيره في أي الحور شاء." That whoever suppresses their rage, not just remains calm. Right? He didn't say غضب here, he said غيظ. غيظ is rage, it's a lot stronger. And whoever suppresses their rage now, and he is able to fulfill it. So it's not out of weakness, it's not out of disability, it's not out of, I didn't get the chance yet. No, I could fulfill my rage. I could take my vengeance, but I choose not to. Whoever is in that situation, Allah will call them on the Day of Judgment at the head of all creation to choose from the Hur al-Ain whoever they wish. We spoke about why it's Hur al-Ain most likely. This is a very, very male addressing concept, even though females get angry as well. But it's something that's very particular to males, feeling emasculated, feeling like you have to defend your honor. So that's why very likely that this hadith is male-centric, even though we fully believe and expect that females who control their anger will have a similar reward. That's something that's huge and very impressive. But it's a male-centric narration because it's a very, very male-centric situation. ما تجرع عبد جرعة أفضل عند الله من جرعة غيظ يغضمها ابتغاء وجه الله تعالى. The Prophet ﷺ said that there's nothing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that the servant swallows, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that pleases Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala more than swallowing their anger, seeking Allah's pleasure. And subhanAllah, that's exactly what it feels like, where you gotta swallow your anger. Like that's a very accurate description, right? You feel like you have to suppress something physically and push it in, submerge it, right? So that it doesn't come out. It has to be put down with this extra effort and strength. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is immensely pleased with that. And another narration of the same hadith, he says that if he does that, إِلَّا مَلَأَ اللَّهُ جَوْفَهُ إِيمَانًا, Allah will fill their chest with true faith. The last thing I want to do is look at our beloved example, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Let's look at anger with him very quickly. So, we have the hadith of Aisha, where she says, فَإِنَّهُ كَانَ لَا يَنْتَقِمُ لِنَفْسِهِ وَلَكِنْ إِذَا انْتُهِكَتْ حُرُمَاتِ اللَّهِ لَمْ يَقُمْ لِغَضْبِهِ شَيْءٍ. He would never take vengeance on his own behalf. If you wronged him, if you owed him something, if you annoyed him, he never ever tried to settle it. He never ever tried to figure it out. It's like, whatever. You go home, you figure it out. You never have to bring it up again. That was his norm. But when one of the rights of Allah or his prohibitions were violated, nothing could stand in the face of his anger. His anger was relentless. Like nothing could calm him down if a violation of Allah of Allah's rights was done. That has to be resolved. His own rights doesn't have to be resolved. How are we going to figure this out? This person owes you, this person hit you, this person cursed at you. We don't need to figure it out. When it's the rights of Allah, we must figure this out. How are we going to fix this? How are we not going to miss Salah again? How are we not going to have this haram thing in our home again? How are we not going to have these words spoken in our gatherings again? It must be resolved, right? It's not something that we can be okay with. We have the hadith of Anas where he said, لَمْ يَضْرِبْ بِيَدِهِ خَادِمًا وَلَا امْرَأَةً إِلَّا أَنْ يُجَاهِدُ فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ. He never struck a servant or a woman and people in general except in the cause of Allah when he was fighting jihad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Anas radiallahu anhu, he says, I served him for 10 years sallallahu alaihi wasallam, فما قال لي أف قط ولا قال لي لشيء فعلته لما فعلت هذا ولا لشيء لم أفعله ألا فعلت هذا. I served him for 10 years, he said, and he never told me a single day. He never got frustrated. I never heard him vent air and frustration. Anas is saying in 10 years. And he started serving him when he was like 7 or 8. 7 or 8-year-olds are going to tick you off all day long. That's what they do best, right? And for 10 years, let alone their preteen years, their teen years, you got to go through all that. And you never said, Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, that's impressive. Right? That's really, really impressive. And he never, what's more impressive is the next sentence. He never said to something that I did, why did you do that? Or something that I didn't do, why didn't you do that? Again, that's what you spend telling that age group all day long. Why did you do this? Why didn't you do that? And then blowing air out of your mouth. It's like literally the 3 things that you spend most of your time interacting with them with. And subhanAllah, he didn't do any of them, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And then in another narration he says, إِذَا لَامَهُ بَعْضُ أَهْلُهُ قَالَ دَعُوهُ فَإِذَا قُضِيَ شَيْءٌ كَانَ. And if his family now, they're not going to be the same as him, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. No, they'll go to Anas and say, why did you do that? Why didn't you do that? They wouldn't have the same patience as Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So they would go to Anas and say, and then he would come around and say, leave him alone. He would actually come back and say, leave him alone. If Allah willed, it would have happened. And it didn't. So that's it. He's a young boy. And this isn't to say he didn't teach, right? We have other instances where he did teach, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, where he taught. But this is showing you that Anas' starkest memories of him over 10 years was this fashion. Aisha said he was a walking Quran. That was his mannerisms. And then she said whatever the Quran praised, he was pleased with. Whatever it dispraised, he was displeased with. He'd get upset at. So it shows you his rubric for his emotions, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Abdullah ibn Mas'ud once came to him, he said, O Messenger of Allah, he had distributed spoils of war. Right? At the end of the war, there's property, gold, silver, sheep, whatever that was left over by the enemy. He's distributing it, and one man gets his portion, like, here you go. The Messenger of Allah said, this is for you. So he looks at it, he gets annoyed, and he says, whoever proportioned this portion, whoever sent me this sheep or this gold or this silver, didn't do it seeking the pleasure of Allah. Like whoever divided these things, they didn't do it for the sake of Allah. They did it for themselves. And this is the Messenger of Allah that sent us. The man's trying to say one thing, which is what I wanted more, right? He's upset at the portion that he got. But trying to pack, that sounds selfish. That makes you look like the sleazy, greedy person that you are. So you have to package it in a nice religious package, which is, this isn't fair, it's not for the sake of Allah. And these people exist all throughout time in history, where they realize that just saying how they feel or they want will look sleazy, will look negative, so they have to package it in a religious package, and they do so. So Abdullah ibn Mas'ud tells this to the Prophet ﷺ, and he says, "Shaqqa alayhi." It was very hard for him to hear that. Like, and he said it, if I don't do things for the sake of Allah, who will? Like, what's my job here? What's been my whole story? Where did you come out of? But تغير وجهه, his face changed color, and he became angry. But he didn't pass this, meaning these physical manifestations, where his face changed color and he became angry. He didn't pass any of that except for the sentence, قَدْ أُذِيَ مُوسَى بِأَكْثَرَ مِنْ هَذَا فَصَبَرَ. Musa was harmed more than this and he was patient. So Abdullah Mas'ud saying that's all that came out of him. He said this sentence and he kept going about his work. Even though this statement is blasphemy, right? This statement can make you a non-Muslim, right? To say the Prophet is not being fair, is not seeking the pleasure of Allah, like, then who is? Right? It's a contradictory statement to your belief in him as Rasulullah. But he just let all that go. This person's a Bedouin, doesn't know better. New Muslim, he let it all go. We have the hadith of Aisha where he entered her home, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he saw a curtain. So he took it down. She said, فَتَلَوَّنَ وَجْهُهُ, his face changed color as well, and had pictures of creatures on it. And he said, إِنَّ مِنْ أَشَدِّ النَّاسِ عَذَابًا يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ الَّذِينَ يُصَوِّرُونَ هَذِهِ الصُّوَرِ. Those of the most severe torment on the day of judgment are those are the image makers who make images like this. So he's saying, take this down. We're not supposed to have this in our house. So it upset him, is the whole point. Things that are meaningful. One or two more just very, very quickly. It was complained to him in one of the... So they'd have some congregations besides his, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the furthest outskirts of Medina, that people won't walk for 2-3 hours to get to Masjid Nabawi and then 2-3 hours back. So they'd make their own jama'ahs. One of these jama'ahs complained to him that the imam takes a very long time. So the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they said he got angry, he got upset. And he went there, he advised the people, and he commanded that they lighten the salah on people. SubhanAllah, he's getting upset that someone's praying too long. Because it's putting the people through fitna. They're not going to stand in the prayer, they're not going to focus, they're not going to benefit. So he's upset on their behalf, and that, someone might have a negative reaction towards salah because of this. The last one that we'll mention is Anas ibn Malik again. He says, I was walking with the Messenger of Allah ﷺ, and he had a thick woolen cloak on him. That was very, very harsh material. Because it was a cold day. So it's a harsh material that's very heavy, very insulating. So he had it on his shoulder, on his back. And as we were walking, a Bedouin comes up to us. فجبذه بردائه جبذة شديدة حتى نظرت إلى صفحة عاتق رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قد أثرت بها حاشية البرد من شدة جبذته. And then I look at, a Bedouin man comes across us, and he grabs the collar of this woolen cloak. Prophet ﷺ has a harsh wool garment, and the man just grabs it like this. And then he tugs. He says, until I looked at the Prophet ﷺ's neck, and it has scratched it up because of the harsh material and the severity of this man pulling. Can you imagine this man's physically attacking Rasulullah ﷺ? That's literally what's happening here. And he says, Ya Muhammad, calls him by name, doesn't say, O Messenger of Allah. He says, Ya Muhammad, O Muhammad, Murli min malillahi alladhi indak, command for me to be given of the wealth of Allah that He has put in your hands. Allah gave you money, right? Give me some of it. That's what he's saying. Hey Muhammad, Allah gave you money, give me some of it. That's literally the sentence if you want to bring it to English. Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. After pulling him in this harsh fashion, such to the extent that his neck is now bruised. So Anas says, فَالْتَفَتُّ إِلَى رَسُولِ اللَّهِ. Now I turned to him to see his reaction. Anas is saying, I want to see what he's going to do. ثُمَّ ضَحِكْ ثُمَّ أَمَرَ لَهُ بَعَطَاهِ. He laughed and he said, someone get this guy some money that he's asking for. Go to the treasury, get this guy something. SubhanAllah, look at the reaction compared to the context. So everybody else, they think in, rep points, plus and minus. They think in aura. How am I going to look in front of people? How is this going to be perceived? I can't lose. Can't lose what? That's a question I'd love to ask people. What have you spent so long building that's at risk here? But the answer is nothing, so there's no point in asking. But they feel like all this facade is at risk. So I can't stay quiet. I can't let this go. I can't let, that smirk means something. And that's how they function through their whole lives. They begin like this as kids. And then they have to strike somebody, right? Meet me outside the parking lot or whatever, outside the park at 3 p.m. It starts like that. And when they get to adults, they don't change much. They won't meet you outside the park at 3 because work finishes at 5. But they won't physically fight you that quickly. Some still do, but most won't. But their thought process hasn't changed the least. Everyone's out to get them. Everyone is being cursed out in their mind. Everybody, you just wait. And they just have no lid on their anger. This loose beast, this loose cannon inside of them. And the number one victim is you. Is your good deeds. Is your connection with your Creator. Is your connection with your fellow Muslims. Is your peace of mind at night. Then we read the hadith of the man that Abdullah ibn Amr ibn al-As goes to spend the day with him because the Prophet ﷺ said 3 days in a row he's a man of Jannah. After 3 days with him he says, what is it about you? The Prophet ﷺ said this, I came here to observe you and I haven't seen anything. He says, I don't know, nothing. And then he leaves disappointed and he calls Abdullah back. He says, I thought of something that every single night before I go to sleep, I lay down on my bed and I think of every single Muslim that I know. And I make a commitment to myself that all of them owe me nothing. I forgive all of them for any hardship. I have no hard feelings on them. I have no ill will towards all of them. How is he able to do this? He lives a life without anger for sure. He doesn't get angry at people. Lets things go. So you have a long journey, a deep pit to get out of that's been crafted to you by your society, by entertainment, by your ethnicity maybe. Your ethnicity is more prone to anger, is more prone to colorful language. By your own family background that you grew up in. And then by your own temperament as an individual. Maybe you're just an angry individual. All these things collectively create you. Create your temperament. Create your behavior. And you have to look at all of this and say, well, can't change the past. I can't change the ingredients that went into where I'm at now. But I can alter the ingredients for the future and I can fix them. I can fix them for the future so that I'm not an angry, loose cannon. And that's the last thing that I'll mention, which is the Prophet ﷺ told us, إِنَّمَا الْعِلْمُ بِالتَّعَلُّمِ وَالْحِلْمُ بِالتَّحَلُّمِ. Knowledge is through, how do you gain knowledge? Through learning. You got to go to class. It's not going to be it's not a process besides going to learn. And then hilm, forbearance, patience, is through what? Through practicing it, through learning it. And the point of this hadith, the scholars have said, is what? Why do these things group together? Ilm, knowledge, and forbearance, patience in the face of adversity and hardship, which you need to not be angry. Why are these two things grouped together? Yeah. So both of them don't show fruits quickly? Good guess. So you're gonna need patience if you're gonna seek knowledge. They're connected in their journey. It's true. It's not what I have, but it's true. Yeah, Mohammad.
I think there's a lot of different reasons, and one of them is knowledge is supposed to humble you, and one of the big root causes of anger can be arrogance.
These are all great connections, and like you said, they could be mentioned in explanations. It's not the main one that I found, but these are very interesting and useful nonetheless, the connections between these two qualities. It's actually not a connection that they have, it's a difference, but only in people's mind. So the scholars have said the reason is because إِنَّمَا الْعِلْمُ بِالتَّعَلُّمِ, knowledge is through learning. What's your reaction to that sentence? Duh, right? Like no one would need to be told that. Doesn't need to be taught. Prophet ﷺ doesn't need to tell you. He doesn't need divine inspiration tell you if you want to learn, you gotta go. If you want knowledge, you gotta go learn. We don't need wahi for that. It's obvious. But the second statement, people will argue with. I'm just not a patient person. I'm just an angry person. There's nothing that can be done. That's just how I am. Everybody has to steer clear of the bull, right? Steer clear of the horns. I'm always charging. No, get out of here with that. Get patient. Learn to control your anger. That's what the Prophet ﷺ is telling us. That's not an acceptable answer. Imagine if we were sitting here and someone says, you see them they just do whatever with their shoes and they hope they can walk home without tripping like I do every day. I never learned how to tie them. I just freestyle. It works. Which I probably shouldn't have said that because it ruins the whole example I'm about to say. But imagine you go to someone like that, like me, who's tying their shoes, any random nonsense. I did learn how to tie once upon a time, but that's not the point. But what I'm trying to say is, if you saw someone doing whatever, and you told them, no dude, no Muhammad, there's a way of tying it actually. You don't have to do this each time and hope for the best. And if my response was, no, I just don't know, leave me alone. What would you say? Muhammad's not okay, right? It's not normal. I didn't say, it's too hard or I don't understand. I said, no, I'm just ignorant of how to tie shoes, so I just do this each time. He'd be like, yeah, I can show you how to tie them. Like, no, I just don't know. It's just a problem I have. I was born without knowing how to tie shoes. And you're like, yeah, dude, none of us came out doing the bow perfectly. And I just keep answering with, no, I just don't know. You're going to say that Muhammad's a fool, right? That's not acceptable. It's not logical. That's what the hadith is telling us. The same way that's not logical, and it's obvious and we all understand it, the second one's not logical either. I'm not patient because I can't be. I'm angry because that's how I am. No, he's telling you, get over that and get to work. Because the same way that people become knowledgeable by learning, you can become patient, you can control your anger by practicing it and learning it, inshallah. So we pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allows us to control our anger and earn His pleasure through that, as He mentioned to us so many times through the Quran and Surah Al-Imran and through the description of His Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam about the importance of controlling this particular trait. Jazakumullah khairan everyone. Sorry we went a bit over, but I'm glad we finished this hadith, and inshallah continuing with hadith number 17 next week. Any questions? You can cut the live, Mayed, with the Q&A. We never include the Q&A, but